Hello, welcome to the 2025 Potomac Officers Club Intel Summit. My name is Pat Host. I'm a senior reporter and content developer here at Executive Mosaic. And joining us today is Jason Lee. He's a senior director and chief intelligence officer at Moody's. Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Pat. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you this morning.
Tell me why business intelligence is growing in prominence in the intelligence community.
BizINT for short, or business activity intelligence, is a sub-discipline to OSINT, open source intelligence. And it's a powerful tool today because it tracks bad actors as they participate in legitimate business activity in parallel to their nefarious. And what happens is that these bad actors leave behind signals and footprints in that data that they don't even realize are being left behind. And that puts an asymmetric advantage back into the hands of the investigator. One of the other powerful things about this kind of business data is that it gets frequently updated all the time. And what that means is that an investigator can take a snapshot of different periods of the temporal spectrum and be able to ease their ability for temporal analysis in terms of patterns and trends within that data over a period of time. The other piece of it is the privacy restrictions are much less on business activity data than it is with persons data. PII, where a lot of the privacy laws restrict the use of U.S. person, both demographic information and obviously their identity information, not so much for businesses because businesses are an inanimate object. And that really allows data collectors to collect a wider breadth and depth of this kind of data compared to individuals' data. The other thing about business activity intelligence that's really important to understand is that not only can it solve financial crimes, but it can really address non-financial crimes with a financial nexus. So those are things like forced labor or human trafficking, drug trafficking, things that are not inherently financial like anti-money laundering or terrorism financing, however, have that connection that allows you to use that data and again, survey the behaviors, the activities, the tendencies, the intent in some cases of these bad actors. Last but not least, BizINT is really useful for a collector who's coming up with key intelligence questions or collection requirements, essentially, for the first time. How many times has an analyst faced a situation where they're facing a writer's block? They're not even sure what questions to ask, what data sets to look into. Well, you can actually look at the business data as a way of coming up with that common operating picture at its earliest stages, and then formulating those questions around those important issues. And that really allows you to have better questions, and questions that, again, your customers will care about, whether that's going to be policymakers or more tactical intelligence customers.
Wow, that's really interesting. Jason, what types of organizations are leaving behind these financial breadcrumbs for the intelligence community to pursue with business intelligence?
I would say, Pat, there's three different kinds of organizations that leave behind these patterns. Organized crime that is highly structured, ones that are looking at a long-term business scheme. Those would be ones that would do obfuscation, intentional schemes that would involve catfishing and other kinds of sophisticated schemes that would be looking to target principally individual consumers, but of course, small businesses. So this is where national security comes into play of the cross-section between government and the private sector. Traditionally, when you're looking at a target, a lot of governments feel that it's going to be a government equity. It's going to be classified information that's going to be penetrated. But not so much today because a lot of IP, things that are useful for our adversarial countries developing competitive technologies, these kinds of companies are actually more interested in unclassified data. The other kinds of organizations that are really looking to exploit victims but leave behind these valuable signals are proxies for state-sponsored organizations. So this would be essentially a counterintelligence concern when we're talking about an organization that's completely backstopped with actual legitimate sales, actual legitimate customers and stakeholders. They may actually have operations that really simulate any other company at that Fortune 500 or even smaller kind of structure, but they are really doing things on behest of a foreign government, utilizing all the resources, the money, the leadership, the connections. That's where business activity intelligence is really important. Identifying beneficial owners, identifying board of directors, and other kinds of stakeholders that have what they call, foci, foreign operations and control and influence over these companies, and utilizing these relationships for some of these nefarious activities, but actually legitimized by plausible deniability through their legitimate activities.
Wow, that's fascinating. I never knew any of that. All right, Jason, what is one hot topic in intelligence that excites you?
Well, there's so many hot topics these days, Pat, it's hard to boil down to one. But if I were to say one topic, it would be diagnostic analytics as an emerging area of enrichments for intelligence analysts and operators. Traditionally, a lot of companies have focused on prescriptive and predictive analytics. Prescriptive analytics, as you know, is talking about the what is it? What are we actually looking at? And predictive is all about talking to a forecast, looking at a prediction. But diagnostic analytics looks at those qualitative issues that are hard to nail down. The why has something happened and how did it happen? The modality, the methodology, means, modes, all of that good stuff that the bad actor is actually employing and providing surprise against us as investigators and security professionals. And I think that as AI starts to become more prolific, it's going to require a lot of LRMs, or large reasoning models, as opposed to large language models, to accommodate and bake in their analytic tradecraft that's going to be able to understand that how and the why, so that you can actually have not just faster and better finished intelligence analysis, but it all goes back to the stage before finished analysis, and that's domain assessment. Understanding your domain, what are the facets that have to do with that, and then kind of what are the actionable issues that a policy maker needs to make within that domain. So no longer is it kind of just immediately jumping into a targeting situation where you're looking at binary information about kind of the who and where has something happened, still very important, and then that old-fashioned view of going from that directly into finished analysis. Now it's all about focusing a little bit more on those fuzzy logic issues within domain assessment that happen in the middle of those two stages in the intelligence cycle.
Well, that's a fantastic explanation, Jason. I was just going to ask you, how can AI help intelligence professionals do their job better?
I must have been reading your mind, Pat. AI is something of a tricky game. I still believe, of course I'm old school, that the analyst still needs to be in the loop. However, artificial intelligence can help in three ways. One is as a co-pilot. So some of the junior analysts need to be able to prompt in natural language different kinds of questions, whether those are key intelligence questions from that collection perspective, or just an informal question of what am I actually looking at within the data set. That co-pilot is able to return something of a tipping and queuing situation for that analyst, saying where to look in the data set next and why, right? And that's really where a lot of analysts get stuck when they're just on their own devices as a human. The second element of AI is the ability to, again, focus on those diagnostic analytics, pushing these insights about non-obvious points in the data set that you might not have realized if you actually looked at everything manually, because there's just so much data, that big data problem, but also the convoluting nature of data where you've actually got conflicting information going in different places. So really an analyst can rely on AI to do confirmation of hypotheses or refutation of hypotheses and be able to kind of justify it more to their bosses, their policymakers, and tell them why that's the case. Last but not least, artificial intelligence is really important in terms of case management. So it's all about structuring the workflow. We all know about structured analytic techniques from the technical side, looking at it substantively, getting good at the content, understanding what's actually in that data. But also we have to realize too, in a structured way, are we actually making logical statements that make sense to different kinds of customers? The U.S. intelligence community is uniquely structured where we're broken down into functional roles, right? Targeters, collectors, all source analysts. And when you have that kind of situation, a lot of times when you're stuck in your role, you're only looking at the equities within your particular role. How do we actually get out of that stovepiping, kind of cross the bridge between those roles so we have more of a seamless way of actually pushing insights and turning them into actionable decisions. And the only way to do that is through the help of artificial intelligence, which kind of take out that confirmation bias, that self-selection bias out of the process, and again make logic reasoning more structured.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Jason.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure, Pat.
Would you like more insights like this? Make sure to join us at the 2025 Homeland Security Summit on November 12th. Buy your ticket today at PotomacOfficersClub.com, and I'll see you there.